Welcome to session 4AN, being delivered by Ash Mahay, and his title is Spend Less Time Administering Your OMEGAMON Environments. He will be explaining what that all means as we go through the session, or at least I hope he will. And please remember to give feedback at the end to this session. Obviously, it can be done through the QR code or through the Bring Your Own Agenda, and there is an HTTP type link as well. And I hope you enjoy the session. Over to you, Ash. Oh, sorry, one more thing. Any questions, just pop them in the chat as you're all muted. And if it's appropriate, I'll break into the session to ask them of Ash, or we'll save them to the end, either way. Okay, thank you.
Hey, hello, thanks Anna, and welcome to everyone else on the Zoom meeting that we are having now. Yes, so the session is spend less time administrating your OMEGAMON environments. As Anna said, it's session 4AN. We are going to talk about the future, or rather what's available now and possible what ideas or we have in the future around the OMEGAMON configuration, because there's been a pain for some customers. We know that. I see some customers on join the call, so hello to you all. And so the agenda today, if I can get my mouse working. Okay, so agenda today is we're going to look at look at what the configuration manager is. So IBM Z Monitoring Suite Configuration Manager. We're going to look at how you can process or configure the OMEGAMON agent datasets using the configuration manager. And we're going to go through an example configuration run through. So you may be aware of PalmGen, and then you'll see what the configuration manager is now. And excuse me, it's going to be screenshots. I do apologize in advance. These are screenshots I've had to take. I wanted to do a live demo, and unfortunately I couldn't get my dev guy, the architect in fact, to do the demo. He's unavailable today, so I've got screenshots, and you'll still get a run through and hopefully a good idea how it works. And then there's a topic about future ideas, what we're looking at in the future with the configuration manager, how we can further advance the features and functions. And I did say in the abstract that we're introducing a new UI, but actually I presented that on Tuesday, so I'll give you details how you can get that back, go with what I spoke about. It'll be one slide, and I'll give you the details about session, so you can go back and have the look through the replay. And there's question and answers, but as Anna suggested, add questions to the chat box, and if there are some burning questions and it's appropriate to ask them there and then, please do. I mean, I would like the interaction, because otherwise I will go off track. And so let's keep it interactive as possible. Yes, please. So looking at the first topic, introducing the IBM Z Monitoring Suite Configuration Manager. Now, before we do that, I wanted to say the PalmGen. Now, we do know we've had PalmGen for several years now, and it's a configuration deployment tool for the OMEGAMON agents. There is a subsystem discovery option that comes with PalmGen, and some customers have used it and seen the value of that. It's called a Discovery Library Adapter, or ZDLA. However, it's all ISPF driven panels with multiple batch jobs that get submitted and executed. You navigate through the many ISPF panels as instructed, and as you've seen with PalmGen, there's different jobs that will get created for different actions, and there's hundreds, if not thousands, of parameters that you may have to review and update, and you submit the jobs in series, and you need to review each job completion. So if there are failures, you might have to back out some changes and resubmit the job, and then continue on from there if it's completed successfully. And then applying maintenance or updates, even if it's one parameter change you want to add, can be cumbersome. You need to understand which jobs and series of jobs to run if you have to apply maintenance and or update parameters. all in all, sorry, it can be long-winded, and that's because there are these parameters that you need to understand. The documentation online and within the tool itself, the ISPF help panels, sometimes we're out of sync, but the ISPF panels are quite up to date than if you look at the online data manuals. But anyway, PalmGen, we've heard the pain points, and so customers have enrolled in this IBM Z client feedback program, and you register with your IBM ID. I've provided a link here. You'll get the docs and upload it to the GSE website, so you don't have to memorize that and write it down. With this client feedback program, you do sign an NDA, non-disclosure agreement, so you could do it for the team or the company itself. But through this, you can provide us feedback, and then also you'll get access to beta programs and updates on the future roadmap. And through this program, we've spoken to many sponsored users over the last few months. Excuse me. In fact, for the last 12 months, we've had multiple meetings, face-to-face and virtual, listening to pain points. And I think we've caught most of them general pain points from our customers with running PalmGen, and taken them on board and looked at the future, how we can actually streamline and process the PalmGen configuration in less steps. And obviously there's documentation around that as well. So with that in mind, we introduced, and I'll say it's phase one now up front, but we introduced the IBM Z Monitoring Suite Configuration Manager back in July. So it's this year, not long ago. And this is our configuration deployment tool for the monitoring suite. It enables system programmers to install and domain experts to tune. It's a new configuration tool. It eases the implementation and tuning of IBM's monitoring suite. It's simplified and streamlined discovery. So you don't use a discovery library adapter. There's a new simplified streamlined discovery, and there's a workflow that incorporates it. It reduces the time required to update when releases or services applied. And that's important because instead of rerunning all these multiple jobs, you can edit the parameter, rerun one job, and you should be up and running again. Those changes will be incorporated. So you'll see in examples later on how easy that is and how quick it will get implemented. And the idea is the improved runtime environment rollout across the Sysplex. The number of data sets are reduced, and we've provided some extra help in configuring or post-configuring your LPARs across the Sysplex. So with that in mind, I should remind you again, and you'll hear this multiple times because you will probably have some burning questions. This is phase one, and we have multiple phases going on, and there's going to be another PTF available hopefully by the end of the year, which will have more function added to the configuration manager. Okay, so at a glance, as I said, it's a new way to configure the OMEGAMON agents. It's part of the IBM Z monitoring suite. Now, it provides an alternate to using the PalmGen ISPF dialogues. So this is at a glance, and I'll go in more detail later. So it's a batch-orientated process, only a batch job, one batch job. It uses sparse runtime environment, so parameter specification, so limited parameters that are exposed. If you're happy with the defaults, you don't need to review them. You can accept them as they are. We don't actually show you the default parameters in the configuration manager. If you do want to see what they are members available, and you can review them outside the batch job process. The documentation has been vastly improved, and it's part of the knowledge center, and it's actually, you'll find the configuration manager under the IBM Z monitoring suite online documentation. So phase one, as I said, you'll keep hearing this from me. We provided this with this configuration manager with APAR OA 59463. It's for prospective and new customers, and you'll see what that means below. It's designed to get IBM Z Monitoring Suite and OMEGAMON agents up and running quickly. So there's 14 agents within that one monitoring suite. You'll get them, you'll get those configured and up and running and you'll see how that's done. Does not import existing PalmGen runtime environment configs at the moment. So if you're an existing OMEGAMON user and you've used PalmGen, you'll have your own PalmGen runtime environment config files. They won't be imported into the config manager today with the APAR above, but we are looking at that. Does not support standalone OMEGAMON agents yet as well. So if you're not in a suite, you just have standalone agents, those aren't managed with Configuration Manager today because they're not part of the suite yet. But we'll talk about future ideas later on in the slide. During the development process of Configuration Manager, as our dev guys noticed that some of the jobs like KCI pass was taking too long and it was using a lot of CPU. So through their development, they managed to incorporate savings in Configuration Manager, but also provided an APAR, which is OA59910, for PalmGen customers. So KCI pass has improved, the performance has improved vastly. Now it's reduced the CPU consumption by 90% and elapsed time by a factor of, I would say, some said it could run up to an hour. We're talking it's in minutes now. So the KCI pass performance is vastly improved. Even if you're not a configuration manager user today, or you will be able to access it for a while, do apply OA59910 because you will find the benefits as well. So our development team, as they move along with Config Manager, will look at savings in PalmGen as well and translate them over to transfer them over to PalmGen through future APARs, if applicable. So it's available and works even without Configuration Manager, as I said there. So that APAR is available. Okay, so at a glance, again, just doing a quick compare of PalmGen to Config Manager. As I said, Configuration Manager is batch only for now. It's a batch only interface. As well as with PalmGen, it's combined ISPF panels. As I said earlier, you need to go through navigate through ISPF panels and submit the jobs that at that step. Configuration Manager generates runtime members from parameters. You only need to submit one job. That's a major difference to what PalmGen is. So with PalmGen, you have to submit multiple or series of jobs. Some jobs submit other jobs, and they take a long time. And you need to review each job output. And if their return codes are fine or 0 or 4, you can go to next step. Otherwise, you're going to have to go back and fix the problems and go back in again to submit the job and so on. And it can take a while to get around that. Well, whereas with the config manager, just the one job. And you'll see what you have to do if there's an error in the config manager output. Okay, so you only need to know about the input parameters and the output runtime members. So with the configuration manager, just input parameters, similar to, I guess, with PalmGen, you do need to have some standard agent parameters that you need to ensure are correct because your environments might have different data set names and so on. But I'll show you an example what that means. In PalmGen, you need to understand the inputs and outputs. As I said earlier, there's thousands of parameters that you need to be able to see or validate, and you need to understand the process that generates the runtime members. We said the configuration manager uses sparse configuration profiles, containing all the parameters you need, and there'll be a few dozen parameters exposed. If you're happy with the default, as I mentioned earlier, the default parameters, we don't expose them. Within the PalmGen process, you see all of those and you need to edit them if you need to view them. There's a lot of comments and it just gets a bit messy. Integrated subsystem discovery. So as I said as well earlier, the config manager provides a discovery mechanism, a lightweight discovery mechanism, and you do not need to install the discovery library adapter as you do with PalmGen today. And another pain point our customers have told us is that when they run the PalmGen, you need to run it with a super user authority for the USS steps, and we've managed to get around that, or rather with the config manager, you do not need that process. Now, as long as you have USS access, that's fine. You do not need to have super user authority in order to run the USS related jobs. Okay. So as I said earlier, so the documentation now, the idea is to reduce the time to value. So the documentation, we've moved away from the config manager, or you still got documentation in Palm Just panels. With the config manager, there's no documentation in the job. You just need to refer to the online documents in Knowledge Center. So documents changed. It's emphasized as a sorry, I was going to say, right. So documents have been changed and updated to emphasize key deliverable or day one support. It previously was overwhelming, as customers told us, too difficult to follow. There were too many parameters they had to look at, and it was just took too long for the agents to be configured. The documentation is now task orientated. That's inherently simpler than PalmGen. And the idea, like I said, is to make it simple, reduce time to value, meaning you can get things up and running, OMEGAMON configured and up and running in less time. And as you'll see here, as you see on this slide, it's batch orientated. You only get to see the sparse parameters. You don't need to see all of them. And expose the users only what you need to know. Okay. So what's the architecture? So the architecture is quite simple. There are two jobs that we provide. The main job or the workflow is KCI Omega. That's the workflow engine. So the workflow engine will ingest the sparse descriptors or the discovered sparse descriptors of subsystems. So that discovery process that I mentioned earlier, which actually is the KCI alpha job, it needs to be APF authorized. It's an alias of the KCI Omega job as above. However, to run the discovery, you need to use the KCI alpha job, and that will do the discovery on the LPAR or on the remote LPAR if you use SysF. And members will be created in the runtime source library. And then once you've run the discovery and you go through the create process, it calls a sub workflows to ultimately create the runtime and data sets and the started task JCLs. So the flow is quite simple here. As you can see, there's not many steps to get this up and running. Okay, so let's look at the job example. So all tasks are handled by just one simple JCL. As you can see here, it's not many lines, right? The program we use is KCI Omega primarily, and there are 4 actions that you use. So the first one is create. It assumes you have nothing implemented, because as I did say, it's a configuration manager for the Munching suite agents only. So it assumes that there's nothing implemented. You do not have any runtime environments running at the moment or created. There's no data sets except your S&P libraries. That's all it's looking for, TCAN CUS and TCAN mod. Those are the 2 data sets that it requires. Creates a runtime environment definition source library. So that's what the create action does. Single source of all the parameters associated for your runtime environment. It's a single data set, and that's all that's create does, and adds a few members in that data set. The discover is inbuilt into KCI Omega. It needs to be APF authorized. So when you do run the discovery, you need to change the KCI Omega to KCI alpha. Okay, when you do that, you do not, like I said, you do not need a DLA or discovery library adapter. It discovers, so when you submit the job, discovers all, sorry, you should change the action to discover as well. So when you run that job, it will discover all the subsystems you can monitor with the OMEGAMON agents in that time, the suite. After discovery, you can modify and validate the parameters. So parameters or parameter members are created again in this source library, this runtime source library that I'll show you in examples of in a little while. Then after that, once you've edited the members and you're happy with the output and of those members, then you change the action of, you switch back to KCI Omega, of course, and you change the action to generate. And this is the only big step left, really. It builds your runtime environments from end to end once you submit that job, and runs all the steps you would have run in PalmGen in a single job step. So in PalmGen, I think there was a dozen, maybe more jobs that you would have to run in series, and maybe jobs within jobs. You just run the create job, create action, that's it. And that's all you need to do. And so that's, you can see it's quite simple, right? So you do need to pass some entries, or rather some specific names. So runtime name is actually the runtime that you want to create. It could be demo 1 in this case, or it can be dev or test, whatever name you want. And you need to set what the runtime libraries are going to be, also runtime environment agent data sets are going to be called or prefixed. So that's the high level qualifier. In this case, it's ash.demo, but it could be anything. It could be dev or test version 1, version 2, whichever way you want to call it. Okay. We do have a delete action. So if you want to do cleanup, you want to delete the runtime environment, you just run the delete action, submit the job, and it cleans everything up for you. Okay. And that's what you need to do in this job. And that's it. One job. Okay. So we touched on the documentation, very much task orientated, as I said earlier. So to make it simple and possible as possible for users, we focus on what needs to be done to get the OMEGAMON configured and up and running. So we said we created some or devised this list of 6 steps really that you need to follow in order to get the OMEGAMON configured and up and running. Okay, so the first one, as I said, is create. This creates your runtime environment. So it actually creates just one data set called, which is your RTE def library. We set up a list of parameters that most customers change to configure the OMEGAMON. So you'll find members in there when you create this job, when you run this create job action, and it will create you this RTE def library. We'll put some members in there. The result is just like we'll have about 40 or 50 parameters in 6 members provided. And so these provide a complete and best practice list of definitions for all of your OMEGAMONs. Okay. Now it says here it's a sparse set of parameters. We do not expose all the hundreds of parameters that possibly can be used in OMEGAMON. We just really think we've thought about this seriously about how we can reduce the number of options that you need to configure. These are the most standard options that you will need to configure. For example, is it a hub TEMS? Is it a TEMS? What's your IP port? And so on. Yeah, these are the standard parameters that customers will change to fit their environments. So what you do is customize. You go into the RTE def library, you customize the members. You enable or disable the agents you want to be configured. And of course, you can change the parameters, right? And then after that is you can, and it's an optional, you can run the discovery or the discover action. We discovered, so we created a lightweight, or we provide a lightweight discovery, which is integrated into the job. So you do not need to worry about installing DLA, as I mentioned earlier, on each LPAR, because it does require Rex to be installed, or most LPARs probably have Rex, but excuse me, you require the DLA to be installed in order to be running on that LPAR. So which was that a cough to ask a question, Anna, or was it still good?
It was both. There's a question from Sean. Could you use this to build a new RTE to replace a PalmGen install?
Not if you've got the monitoring suite, and that's why I wanted to. That's what I keep highlighting that. Sorry if I think it wasn't clear, but IBM Zen monitoring suite are the only agents, or the agents within that can be configured with Configuration Manager. If you've got the IBM Zen monitoring suite and you've used PalmGen, because PalmGen still is available there, if you use PalmGen, you would still have to rerun the config manager from scratch. You cannot import the PalmGen configurations yet. So the answer is no. You would have to redo everything. But you'll find with the steps, with this job, with the one job, or with the 4 actions, you should be up and running a lot quicker than PalmGen. Hopefully that answered it. If not, please do come off my mic and then ask away. I'm good.
He can't come off mic.
Oh.
Not unless I let him. So, but we can save it for a conversation at the end if required. I will release mics at the end.
Sure. Good. Yes. Thank you for the questions. Yeah, brilliant. So as it says here, go to Knowledge Center if you want guides through the process. The Knowledge Center has been vastly updated for the Configuration Manager, and you'll see this being a common theme going forward, because we have had feedback just about the Knowledge Center, our online manuals, not being as clear and easy to follow. In this case, there we have, you will see, hopefully, if not feedback to me, you've got my email address, or you will have later on as well, just feedback to me and we'll try and get that corrected. Okay, so after the customize, you've customized, deactivated which agents, because you might just want to install an MQ agent, ZOS agent, a network agent, and maybe a Kix agent. You don't need to install DB, you don't want to install DB2 because there's no DB2 on that LPA and so on. You just deactivate those, and I'll show you how you do that. It's very simple. Discover. So once you're ready, you if you're customized, you can discover your subsystems. The discover, like I said, it was a lightweight, but you don't need. Oh, I said already talked about that. So the next one is, you got me, that question got me there. Okay, so next, after you've done the discover and you've corrected, or not corrected, you've updated if you need to all the parameters or fine tune, you could then run the create. And the create job, and it's just create action, creates your runtime environment. This is where you actually do the actual population of the data sets and create the data sets. This actually runs the entire PalmGen process to generate the RT library. So what we have done, like I said earlier, it's the configuration manager is effectively replacing what the PalmGen process does. So it uses the PalmGen, let's say the flow for the PalmGen that you're used to with the ISPF panels, and puts it in and replace that with the generate option. So it runs all the PalmGen process to generate the runtime libraries. There's about 140 steps underneath the covers, and as one of our dev guys told us, they completed the whole configuration in 5 minutes. Instead of hours, they've done it with the generate job, 5 minutes, and they configured 14 agents to get ready, up and running. Of course, there's some post jobs, so you need to run the complete actions. So these are the operational changes on the LPAR. We made some changes here to help as well. So we separated the system changes and put them in separate data sets. So, I mean, you need to still do the APF of the runtime libraries. You still need to bind your plans. Those are your post configuration steps. You still need to do those. But we've provided you a VTAM, provided you a VTAM lib list, example members, proclib members, and VTAM lib members that you need to copy over. So those are now provided in the complete step. So these are data sets, 3 additional data sets we provide. You still need to do your RACF authorization with start task, user IDs, and those example RACF commands are available as well. Then after you've done all that, you can start the agents. That's it, and start monitoring. So, and you can run the cleanup again, as I mentioned here. You can run the cleanup using a delete option action even, and that's it. So 6 steps: create, customize the parameters, discover the subsystems, run the generate, and complete. Complete the post configuration, and you can start the agents. So that's the flow. Okay. So let's go a bit into detail about the actual resource runtime source library. Okay, so it's important to understand what the runtime source library is. We should treat these as a production source library. So do back it up. It contains all the parameters and definitions which call the RTE def, or the runtime definition library, containing all of the parameters required for that OMEGAMON that need to change. Okay, so that's important here. So we don't need to specify many hundreds of default parameters, and that's I know that's what customers did feedback to us. You only need to access those that you are interested in, and we've exposed them. So like I said, there's about 40, 50 parameters that we do expose that you should review with your teams. So that's a single source library, single source of truth, as we say, for your whole OMEGAMON environment. And after you make a change, you just simply, as it says here, if you make a change to one of the parameters or agents, you just rerun the generate job. And again, that action changes the update and updates the OMEGAMON environment that supports that parameter. So if you make a change, you just run that generate job, it'll update the runtime library members as well. it streamlines the maintenance process and post-config process, or if you want to fine-tune the OMEGAMON process rather than going for the palms and ISPF panels. And you've seen how that's done, and you've experienced that. In the runtime RTE library, there are going to be multiple members that are logically separated. So what you get is, was that a question? No. Okay, so
Sorry.
okay, so you'll have a runtime high level runtime parameter library member. So you have that. You have individual agent members. These are parameters separated out for each agent in their own for their own purpose. So, and then you'll have overrides in those members. We do provide you default parameters and activation parameters as well for advanced features. The discovery, then you have the discovery members. These are if you run the discover process or the discover action, you'll get separated, separate discovery members created for you as well. And I'll show you the examples there as well. So when you run the generate job, it sucks in all of these members from this RTU source library and creates and builds the OMEGAMON environment for you. So you'll find that in the past, you would have multiple members that you had to validate, or at least the parameters, as I mentioned before. You don't need to do that. You just create the runtime member, you edit the agent members. Basically, the agent members are specific. They'll have default parameters in there and activation options. And then you have your discovery members. And there is a final one, which is the global and override members. These are such as your system specific settings, okay? Like SAF and class and port number, TCP/IP port number. So if you want to look at it in this diagram, maybe this diagram will explain a bit more, simpler. What we are looking here is that the runtime source library members name configuration, but the member names have a particular standard. So you've got the runtime environment name. So in my case, it was demo 1, right? In that it's the agents that you want to configure. So it'll give you a list of agents you want to configure and default IP ports and so on. That's in that member. Then you get underneath that, you'll get the members or members created, which are for the agents. Okay, depending if you got selected all the agents. In fact, you'll get these anyway. I think you get 5 of them. So if you see here, you got KM $palm, you got KD $palm, and so on. So you got the DZOS agent palms, you got the DB2 palms, kicks palms, and so on, all the way up to the network, which is the KN3 $palm for the TCP/IP. Right, the $palm files contain parameters specific for that agent, but are common across all the LPARs. Ideally, you do not need to edit these $palms, but you can do if you need to tune them to your local standards, but ideally you don't need to. We give you the examples in those palm members as well. So underneath that, now if you run your DLA, or rather your discovery, you'll get LPAR specific members created as well. So you'll see first, you see in this case, you got KD5 $sys1, sys1 being your LPAR. And you may have an IMS agent on there or IMS region running, so you get KI5 $sys1, and of course you got network as well. Okay, these are your these members contain the non-discovery parameters that the agent are for that agent and are specific to that LPAR. Okay, and underneath that you will also get members created, which in this case are KD5 at sys1 and KI5 at sys1, which lists the discovered subsystems on that LPAR. Okay, so the discovery ones that are created are the ones with the at symbol. Can you still hear me, Anna? Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Sorry, my microphone, my headset went quiet because it is a bit temperamental. So yes, just want to double check that. Sorry, thank you. Okay, so these are the members that are created. If you wanted to add more LPARs to the same runtime environment, you can just run the discovery task on the second LPAR using the sysaf, say sys2 in this case, and we'll have members added ending with .@sys2 in the same runtime library as well. So you can create multiple, or rather you can configure multiple LPARs in that one runtime environment. Okay, just brief note on the discovery, and this is important. If you run, it is run by the KCI Alpha program, so you need to edit the JCL and ensure that you switch the program to KCI Alpha and it's APF authorized on the second LPAR or the third LPAR, whichever way it is. Okay. Okay, didn't realize that was there. Okay, so let's look a bit more detail about, or go into a bit more detail about KCI Amiga here. So simplified profiles, like I said, this is the main or the new workflow engine, and then called it KCI Amiga, right? It runs in batch. There's only one batch job. As we said, we provide all the PalmGen tasks has been converted into serious workflows. So what you saw in PalmGen really are reused, and that's what's important here. We didn't want to reinvent the wheel. Where we made improvements is a KCI pass and so on, where we've actually provided vast improvements of performance. It's more consumable script and performs restartable tasks. So if the job fails, you can just restart it after you fixed. So it could be that you've made a typo in the parameter file, or the USS directory doesn't exist. You can just edit the JCL, or so rather the parameter member or the members, and run the job again, and it will continue from that step onwards. Okay. The workflows have so like I said, they have a recovery and error handling in there. So you'll get the messages on the output, and you just rerun the job when you fix that. Okay. If the KCI Amiga workflow runs the entire PalmGen process and creates the required dataset members needed to get OMEGAMON up and running. So as I said, I think earlier, is you get the runtime datasets, you even get the Unix system files that are created, or where the directories are created. We provided the agent started task JCL procedures, and you'll see an example how we've improved that as well. And you get the network definition file data, and we've provided those in datasets as well. In our lab environment, okay, it's in a lab environment, so but still it was a proof of concept of the configuration. 14 agents were configured or selected to be configured. It took them less than 5 minutes to run and consume, and it consumed less than 1 minute of CPU on a Z15 LPAR. Sorry, on Z15 mainframe. So you could see if you've run PalmGen, if you look at the config manager, you can see how much quicker it is to install and configure and install the OMEGAMON agents. It's gone down to minutes. And as someone who's not experienced with OMEGAMON, they can still follow these steps. As you saw, it's 6 steps, and they can get this up and running. Okay. And that was the benchmarking we did. And we believe that's, they may even hopefully improve that further. Okay. All right, so the generate task does, so what, how do we see, validate or view what's happened in the generate task? So here's what the output looks like from a generate task. So there are a couple of important DD statements you'll see here highlighted. In fact, there's 3, but the first 2 are KCI print and KCI trace. These give you the overview of the running and the status update. So you can view these entries, and you should be able to see what's running and where you are in the process, right? And if there are any errors, you go to these members and you'll see what the problem was, and we'll give you the information about it and how you can diagnose. Okay. Underneath that, you'll see a range of DD statements representing the workflows. You'll probably see they're similar to how they were in PalmGen. And so, because as I said, we incorporated the PalmGen flow into this Amiga, KCI Amiga. There is the path JVal as highlighted here as well. That's the validation step. Previously, you would have to run that in PalmGen, so it's still used in PalmGen, but in this case, we actually run it early on And we validate the parameters early on without creating the runtime environment for you. So you want to make sure that your validation is done first, then create the data sets. Of course, the job would stop if there's an error, and you correct the error and you just resubmit it. The point here is that it's easy to debug the process if it's failed with an error. Once you've found the error, corrected it, you just resubmit the job and it will continue on from where it left off. You do not have to go back. The key point is you do not even have to go and delete data sets, right? Or you go back a step and then rerun the generate. You just start the generate and it will continue on from where it left off. So it knows where in the flow it was. And that's another good addition we've provided. Okay, so the KC print or KCI print is the activity and error report. Yeah, you can look at the status of the job. So you can see at the top, you've got the first primary member that it's used, demo 1 in our case, which lists the agents that were selected for installing. So if you've in our case we've selected 14 agents. Okay, below that you'll see the relevant agent parameter members that were ingested. And as I showed you earlier, you got the $palms and you got the $alpar parameter members and so on. And you got the globals as well. Okay. If all goes well, it will just say at the it completed successfully in the middle, as you can see there. All 14 agents were completed successfully, or configuration completed successfully, and it'll give you a return code. In this case, return code equals 0. And then give you a summary at the bottom. You'll see configured 14 agents, created 249 data sets, and they are primed. And it took 5 minutes and 50 CPU seconds. So again, if you compare that to PalmGen, it's vastly improved. And I know Richard's on and he's done this and he's seen the difference as well. Okay, so then you got the RT dataset. So this is what the output is from the generate. So you'll see the OMEGAMON agent datasets. As I said earlier, they're allocated and primed, similar to PalmGen. So for simplicity, we have also provided additional datasets. Before, you would have members that you need to copy over. So what we've done now is provided you the operational data sets. Like I said here, so you've got sys1.proclib and you've got sys1.vtamlib and the sys1.vtam list. They are provided, they contain the members that you need to copy over to your target ALPA equivalent data sets, procedure libraries and so on. You just need to copy them over. Of course, you need to ensure that the post actions are done. So the binds and RACF and so on. And on the right hand side, you can see that we've actually also cleaned up the JCL, so the procedures. So here's a Kix one. And you can notice one thing, most of the comments have been removed. And that was another input from our client feedback program. Customers said there was too many comments in the tasks and the started task, JCLs, proclibs, and we had to just, they had to manually delete them. So we now remove them for you, okay, with the config manager process. So most of the relevant comments are now moved to the documentation. So we keep them in one place. All you need to edit one place. So there's no disparity between the two from the documents in the config manager. In fact, there's no documents in config manager. They're all online now. It's not like PalmGen. Okay. I was going to give you next phase is to give you an example configuration run through. Any questions? Maybe appropriate time.
Yes, there is one in the chat. It says, what about the ISPF members? Do you create new libraries for those members?
That's a good question. I can't recall. Are you talking about the Tom?
No.
Tom? No. Okay. I've got to ask.
Tom.
Not the Tom or the enhanced 3270 UI, as people would say. That's a good question. I can't recall the answer to that one. I suspect yes. Richard, are you on? Would you know? Or otherwise, I'll have to take that question offline.
Not sure, Ash.
Okay, I will take that offline. I can get an answer for that if you
ISP,
make a
yeah,
note.
back to the question answer asker. Okay, ISPF members for OMEGAMON Classic, IMS, DB2, and KICS. I think that's a clarification for you.
Okay, yes, they are still provided, yes, because we're not getting, we configure, we provide those, the classic interface. Yeah, I recall that from a discussion with the dev guys. Okay, the classics aren't going away with this, so maybe if that's
couple more questions.
yeah, sure.
Okay, so continuing on the original question, do you have them in separate libraries?
No. Those are 3 libraries we've provided, which are for the operational, but not for the classics. If that's something that is required, maybe that's, if you're in the client feedback program, please let me know. And it would be good to tell my dev guys. In fact, I will mention that to them.
Okay, yeah, no, he says you should do this.
Yeah, it's a logical, sensible question, actually. Very good, thank you.
Yeah, we will be opening, I'll try and open all the mics closer to the end so that there can be a discussion. But also another question from Sean, can this new method be used to build a highly available hub TEMS used by all the RTEs?
It's very good questions. I wish my architect was here now. I would say the answer would be yes. For now, I believe, now let me see what they said. Yes, I believe so. But it would be better to ask my architect on that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then again, do you have to run the generate on the sysplex where the agents are active, or can you run the generate on a test system?
Yes. Okay. So that's I was hoping one of those questions would come up. There, I have a slide on that. It's a general question. Yes, we have that. That's a common way of actually configuring and installing software in mainframe shops, where you install it from one LPAR on one LPAR, or configure it in one LPAR, and then push out to the target LPARs. So that is something, or one of the future ideas we have. For what you do is only have the discovery, where you can use the job palm sysaf to run it on a remote LPAR to get the discovery, or at least to run the discovery of and find out which subsystems are running on that LPAR, and those members are created in that RTE source library. You want the other thing, which is to generate the data sets on one LPAR, then push them out. That's something we in our future ideas list.
And another question, you've really got them going now. If I have to make a change to a palm, what steps should I run?
Generate.
Just the generate.
Yeah, that's all. And that's why it was another question. This was a key question from our sponsored users. They said feedback on the feedback program. They said we need to have that simplified. Yes.
Excellent. Okay, they seem to have stopped now for a moment, so please carry on.
Very good questions. The HTEMS one, I will get back on. I believe the answer is yes to that. Okay. Okay, so as we said, there's the create, the 4 actions there are. So let's go through them. So here's an example, JC. I do apologize. As I said earlier, these are screenshots. I wanted a live demo. But anyway, here's a JCL, very simplified. JCL member is supplied with APAR OA 59463. So you can use that, or you can see it's quite simple. You can copy it probably from the online manuals as well. Okay, so you run that job, and it creates the base library. And as I said earlier, it will create the RT member and a few $palm members underneath, which are contained. So as we call them, contains a sparse set of parameters for in these members. These members are not that busy. So that's one of the things that came from the sponsor users. We just want to see what we need to change. We don't want to see all of the defaults. Okay, so as an example, in the demo member here, you can see at the top, you can see the RT name, the security security parameters. You've got the port number, the VTAM prefix. So what do you want your VTAM applet prefixes to be, and the USS directory, and the start task prefix as well. Sorry. Then you say which agents you want to configure. If you want to configure a TEMS in this, you want to configure the agents within that monitoring suite, of course. So if you don't want to configure all of the agents, only a few of them, you just change the Y's to an N in this list. Okay. Then you go back to the job. Before that. So here's a example of the global parameters used by all agents. So in this case, you can see through to standard, and you'll probably see these in PalmGen as well. So which are your HFS Java directory, TCAN jar directory, and IKCF load library dataset. And if it's not CSF, if it's sys1, you just change them, right? And you've got DB2, KICS, IMS, MQ. These are the ones, target libraries that generally are available on each LPA where these subsystems are installed. If the high level requires need updating, just change them. If you do not have DB2 or KICS in your mainframe environment, just delete these entries. You don't need them. Just delete them. Okay, here the non-discovery members, as I mentioned earlier, the $palms. Excuse me. You've got hub. In this case, it's a hub that's being created. If it's a remote, you just change it to remote on that LPAR specifically. And you've got the KGW and the KQI. In this case, you've got the KICS gateway, change data sets, and here's an example. So we've changed parameters here if they aren't applicable into your or similar to your environment. Otherwise, you can delete the members, to be honest. And if you've got a broker, you just need to edit these, or at least make sure they match your environment. Again, delete the member if not implementing that agent. Yeah, simple as that. And you don't have to do that again. It's a one-time change. So once you've you've done the create, you run the discovery, and you can run the discovery on multiple systems. So you just add the job palm sysaf if you want to run it on another LPAR. You do need to change, as I mentioned earlier, the program. So just change KCI Omega to KCI Alpha, ensure the dataset is APF authorized, select the discover action, submit the job. And that will create the additional LPAR specific members. Here you see the dollar or the at sysname. So in this case, RSB2, but it's the at the members or ones with at in them, at symbol, are the ones that were discovered. Okay, and in this example, we have a DB2, D5 at, IMS, I5 at, MQ, and network, which is the N3. So these are the network, it could be that you have multiple network stacks, right? You can have more than one. So therefore, that's what N3 at will provide, find for you. Okay, edit those if you need to. Generally, you wouldn't need to. You probably validate and view them. So once you're happy to proceed, you go back to the job. You do need to switch back to KCI Omega because KCI Alpha is only for discovery, and change the action to generate. It's, as I made a note, I said note generate will revalidate the Palm members prior to creating the datasets, unlike PalmGen. Now, if the validates fail, you just edit the members, correct them as before, and just rerun the generate job, and it will continue from where it left off. Okay, that's all you need to do. So run the generate. After a few minutes, as I showed you earlier, you get the datasets created, and you get the additional datasets, proclink, VTAM label, and VTAM list as before. You get started tasks. Started tasks are great, but you still need to complete the subsystem specific actions. So you do the bind plans, if you had the exits, if you need to configure the data collectors for WebSphere, for example, right? So you still need to configure those. These are the post actions. Or if you want to monitor your JVMs, you have to enable the JVM agents as well within the JVMs. And that's it. That's a quick run through. I'm afraid I did want to get a full demo, but that's the run through. So future ideas. Are there any questions, Anna, or we're okay?
There's no new questions, but I'm going to allow people to unmute themselves. You may unmute yourself if you have any. Oh, well, I spoke too soon. What about the security exits? Are they assembled and linked in this process?
So, security exits. No, I believe not. I'll have to take that question off, but I believe not. I did say it's phase 1 at the moment. So if it's something that something that we need to put in there, of course, we should look at that. So I believe not. Anna, are you keeping a log of these questions?
The chats are
Yeah.
recorded, but
Okay.
I'm not keeping a separate log. No.
Oh, okay.
So I suggest you jot them down, or I don't know. Can you copy paste out of here? Appear to be able to select it all.
Can you do that as I'm in full screen mode? I'd like to catch these questions because I'd like to feed them back to Dev.
Let me just see if that worked. Where should I put them? I'll put them straight in the mail.
Excellent.
Let me just check that did work.
And ideally, if who asked the question, I can contact them if that's okay with them.
No, that did not appear to work.
While you're playing around with that, let me continue, I guess. So future ideas. Now, some of these, I do flash here, not committed, but I know some of these are being looked at today. So future ideas. So if you've got an existing PalmGen configuration, can you migrate that or merge it or import it into Configuration Manager? So that is, I know that they're looking at. So the question came out earlier. Yes, we're looking at that one. So if you've got an existing PalmGen, you don't want to redo that all again, which makes sense, which is logical. So yes, we're looking at that. You may have customers, or I know some of our sponsor user customers have embed overrides. So we are looking at also supporting that. If you've got embedded or overrides in your PalmGen configuration, we'll support that in the configuration manager as well. Ideally, if you've got it in PalmGen, we just migrate it over. Centralized configuration management. Now, this was another question. So can you configure on one LPAR and then push it out to package it and deploy it on another LPAR? That's something we have also heard from our sponsor users, multiple sponsor users. It seems it's a common practice. So this is something I'm asking devs to look at seriously as well. That may need, a possible provisioning tool option. So like it says here, modernization. So some customers say we would maybe a UI graphical user interface rather than ISPF panel driven. Could we do it through a UI? Or could you do it through a provisioning tool, maybe through GitHub or some other tool like Jenkins? So I may be looking at options where you can run this batch process through an API. I mean, now this is a future idea, which brainstorming mode, but maybe that's one thing we can look at as well. So if that's something that's interesting you, please let us know, and we can definitely pre-prioritize our future plans. And so these are the kind of ideas we have for the future. You may find there's a PTF coming out later this year, which is only 1 month left, and which will have maybe one of these options available in there. Okay. As I said, we did actually also introduce a new user interface on the Zoe Open Framework. Now, there's a session on Tuesday, session 4AB that was given, and I believe there'll be replays soon maybe next week. So I do urge you to go and listen to that as well. So I'm hoping you will see that we are looking at futures, looking to enhance the experience, especially from starting from a config mode. So how the configuration experience is being vastly improved, and then also from the user experience, as in the user interface, the usage experience, and how we're doing that with the IBM Z Management Explorer. Okay, and this is an example from that slide deck. So statement of direction is replace the TEP. It runs on Zoe. This is a user interface. So, and it doesn't require PalmGens to use basically a TEP graphical user interface and you don't need the end user client Java. So remember talking about future ideas with the configuration manager, talking about graphical user interfaces. You can see these are kind of examples that we can consider as well. Okay. So if you would like to read more about stuff, we do have multiple resource pages available. You got the product home, OMEGAMON product home, which gives you multiple links about all our products and our suites, and go to the documentation. We've got a blog community. It's been moved to IBM communities now. So this link's still valid, this short link. So I urge you to go and have a look. There's one on config manager, there's one on IZSME, and there's others on IBM Java, OMEGAMON Java, and so on. So and you'll see more and more blogs coming in throughout next year as we build up our user experience videos and so on. So we're creating videos, how-tos, and we'll put them on blogs for you rather than YouTube. There's an operations newsletter. I do suggest also or recommend that you register, and so you get your quarterly newsletter reports where we actually do list some of the blog items we've cut or created, or any APARs that have been delivered, new functionality, and maybe even new offerings as well. There's something about OMEGAMON JVM. We provided a red paper if you want to know how to monitor APIs and JVMs on ZOS in particular. And there's Z trials. I mean, which if you haven't got the opportunity to install the products in-house locally, there's a hosted IBM environment. It's free of charge, no credit card needed. You just use your IBM ID, go to Z trial, register for a Z trial. In this case, if you want one for OMEGAMON for JVM, and within 24 hours, you have an email with the logon details for the remote desktop. You log on, there's loads of scenario documents there for you, and you just run through the scenarios, and you can look at the tools yourself in your own time. Get 3 days for them. If you want to extend that out, just re-register again. It's free of charge. They don't charge you again, and you just get another 3 days. New log on, and you can start from the beginning again, or you can jump to the scenario that you want to continue working on. Here's my email address right at the bottom. I fixed it this time, Anna, as you probably noticed. So it's ashok_mahay at uk.ibm.com. It's no longer a link. And final questions. I'll put this on while you're, if you've got questions or writing questions. So here, do submit your feedback. We are 4 session. And there's the QR code.
And also, please remember to donate a small amount for this year's GSE charity. Okay, you've had a thanks, Ash, with a smiley face in the group chat. I also thank you for the giving up your time to provide this session. And sorry I can't get you a beer. And, and thank you everyone for attending. We have overrun slightly, so I shall end the session now. Patrick has said that he is very much looking forward to start using this. So obviously you've got a convert.
Yep, that's why we created it. We heard the pain points from our customers. We listened. Hopefully you can see that we're going in the right direction there. Feedback is always welcome.
Yes, and don't forget, you can put that feedback, and you can put those comments, any comments that you like, in the feedback. Ash will be able to get that feedback, and see what you all thought of the session in reality.